This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. The Browns play the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Now, I'm just going to preference this preview or this conversation of this game between the Browns and the Raiders by saying one thing. This is a game between the Browns and Raiders. And depending on how many years you've been alive, depending on how many seasons you've watched the Cleveland Browns for, you may or may not know what I mean by bringing this up. But every time the Browns and Raiders play, and I do mean every time the Browns and Raiders play, something weird happens. Something. If it's recent, if it's not, the one time they played them in 2021, we had to play Nick Mullins and almost won late in that game with Nick Mullins. They played the Raiders in 2020, and I think that game was decided because our kicker couldn't make kicks. The one game where there was that short first down call when it was obvious that the Browns had gotten past the line of gain. And that's not even talking about some of the more mysterious Oakland Raiders, Cleveland Browns shenanigans that used to happen at the old stadium out there in Oakland. All I'm saying is this. There is what the paper says. There is what to realistically prepare yourself given the information that we have on both teams so far in the season. But there is also the wild card of this being a Browns game versus the Raiders. And I don't care what the analytics tell you. I don't care what reason tells you. Expect something weird to happen in this game. Something's going to happen in this game. It's going to be super weird, and we're not going to know how to feel about it. It's just going to be that. This is what the Browns and Raiders always end is. They never played a game where it's not weird. It's not always bad for the Browns, but it is almost always certainly weird. And this is going to be weird. Another thing to talk about before we even get to the nuts and bolts of this matchup is the odd stat that's out there about Kevin Stefanski in the Pacific time zone. I don't believe he's won a game in the Pacific time zone yet. I think he's had 4 of them. I believe he's 0 for 4. The Browns have not won against a West Coast team in the Kevin Stefanski era. Another thing that's going on is that Kevin Stefanski is usually pretty good after a loss, right? He's usually good at resetting the clock, going 1-0. That's one of Kevin Stefanski's big mantra is going 1-0. So he doesn't enter into a ton of losing streaks. But he also doesn't have a history of winning on the West Coast. Again, I'm telling you right now, just prepare. If you're going to be at that game, if you're going to watch the game, if you're going to be here live on stream with me when I go live for the game at 4 o'clock, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. There it is. Just prepare for the fact that it's going to get real weird. It's going to get weird. This game ain't going to go how you expect it. Look, I'm going to talk about how this game should play out, what the Browns should do to win this game. And I promise you, if there's a game where Deshaun Watson throws for 400 yards randomly, never does it again, this is the game. If there's a game where the Browns lose it because they fumble a disproportionate amount of times, this is the game. If there's a game where the Browns lose it because of some kind of weird rule about a safety punt, this is the game. If this is the game where we get a player that has a key player that has to leave because they get diarrhea or they got throw up or something, this is going to be the game where that happens. I just need everybody to be prepared. On top of everything that we're going to talk about on the field, This game's going to be weird. Also, Gardner Minshew is playing in this game. Another guy who seems to be a high-powered magnet for weird. I've never been in a situation where if I've had to interact in anything Gardner Minshew related that wasn't weird. Every time the Ravens play Gardner Minshew, this shit's weird. Every time Gardner Minshew play in the AFC North is weird. Every time Gardner Minshew plays the Browns, it's weird, bro. I'm just telling y'all right now, there's how this game should go. If we're going to talk about that, I promise you. But this shit going to be weird. It's going to be so weird. I know it's going to be weird. Let me know, before we even get into this video, man, let me know, what brand of weird do you think this game is going to devolve into? Do you think this is going to be like the random running back game where like Royce Freeman goes for like 200 yards? Or like some random running back for the Raiders? Do you think Gardner Minshew throws for 400? Do you think Deshaun Watson throws for 400? Do you think you get like a crazy game from Cedric Tillman or something? Do you think this game between two offenses that has been completely struggling turns into a massive shootout? We all know this game's going to be weird. I'm just wondering how it's going to happen. And look, as prepared as I am for this game being weird, I'm gonna be thrown off guard by whatever happens in this game. I'm just preparing myself for it. I fooled myself into thinking that the Raiders game's not gonna be weird. For like 3 years, I've been like, nah, the Raiders game's not going to be weird. They're not that good. That's old Brown stuff, right? Nah, man, the Raiders game is always weird. It was weird in the 70s. It was weird in the 60s. It was weird in the 50s. It was weird in the 40s. It was weird in the 80s. It was weird in the 90s. It's weird in the 2000s. It's weird in 2010s. It was weird in the early 2020s. It's weird when you play it on Madden. It's weird. It's always weird. This game will never be normal. All right. My anxieties about the weirdness of this game aside, let's talk about some interesting factoids about this game. And I think this game is going to be interesting because when you look at it, the Cleveland Browns currently have the lowest EPA for a passing offense in the NFL. EPA stands for expected points added. It's an advanced metric in football that's really caught on as of late, and it compares a quarterback's impact on a play-per-play basis. The Browns have the lowest passing EPA per play of any team in the NFL. They are dead last, and I think it's by not a big margin, but a considerable margin. But that's okay, because the Raiders actually have the lowest EPA per play for a run defense in the NFL, which means if you're the Cleveland Browns, you should be able to run the ball against the Raiders, and you should really want to run the ball against the Raiders. Let's take out the Watson factor, right? We all know that Watson is better when you have him do less at this point. When you get him under 35 pass attempts, that's when we've gotten the best play games out of Deshaun Watson. But that factor aside, just think about the state that the offensive line is in. They're very much in flux. We have no clue what's going on with left tackle. It seems like it might be James Hudson, but we could be surprised and it not be James Hudson. I know Jed Wills' knee came back clean, but I don't think that means he plays this week. Who knows? But the offensive line is in flux with health, and even when they've been somewhat healthy, they haven't been great. So you don't want to continue to put them in like 40, 50 passing sets and think that that's going to continue to work. The best thing you could do when your offensive line is in flux like this is get the run game going. Now, it's going to be difficult because you're not exactly people moving, and not having Wyatt Teller is kind of a big deal when you're talking about running the ball, because still Wyatt Teller has been by far your best run defender on the Cleveland Browns. But yet, I still think you can move the ball. Again, it's not like the Raiders have been world breakers stopping the run. Now, again, I'm going to tell you, this game's going to be weird. And if this is the game where the Raiders decide to turn into an elite run defense, then this is the game that's going to happen. Because, again, if it's weird and it can happen, it will happen in a Browns-Raiders game. I promise you that. Especially, like, when the Browns go and play the Raiders, it always gets weird. Just prepare yourself. It's going to be weird. But the one thing the Browns offense can't allow this game to be is a shootout. They're not going to win a shootout. We don't have the speed at wide receiver to win a shootout. We don't have the offensive line capabilities to win a shootout. And we don't have the quarterback play to win a shootout. I hate to say it, but I think that the Raiders are better equipped to win a shootout because at least they got Devontae Adams. We don't got Devontae Adams. So I don't think we can win a shootout versus the Raiders, as sad as that is. Defensively, if you're the Browns, they just need to have a more focused week than they did last week. The Browns were horribly out of focus against the New York Giants. I think my personal theory is that they thought that they were going to get 2 or 3 turnovers off of Daniel Jones and just route him. And when that became apparent that they weren't going to route him, they got frustrated. And in that frustration, they tried to make extra plays that weren't really necessary for them to make that made things worse. The Raiders are going to do all of the things that everybody else have done to try to annoy you, right? They're going to do these screens. They're going to do these sweeps. I think the Browns can defend them. I think they're capable of doing it, especially against a Las Vegas team that has struggled offensively. But they have to be focused, right? And I think that's the one thing that's been missing from this defense from the start of the year is that they have not felt like the focus unit yet so far. I've seen this team make a lot of mental errors this season, right? You go back to the Juan Thornhill getting caught flat-footed, not knowing where he's supposed to be, or somebody else. Maybe it was Martin Emerson that wasn't where they're supposed to be, but still there's a huge mental error there that cost the touchdown. Same thing in Jacksonville, the same thing against New York. Saw a lot of mental errors so far this year, and I just don't think the Browns have been super focused defensively. I think they've been a little bit unfocused. I think the pressure about being the best defense in the world has been something that has added to that lack of focus. I think the pressure of the offense not performing has been something that's added to that focus. Whatever they got to do, maybe they got to meditate, drink some tea, do something so they could be more focused this week, because I think that's really been a big issue on an individual level, right? I think there's some issues schematically for this team that can be solved, but honestly, if I just look at it from a player-to-player perspective, it's been a lack of focus in my eyes. I think this team just has not been locked in defensively at the level that they have been before. Still a top 10 defense in spite of that, which is kind of amazing, but still if this defense decides to lock in for 4 quarters, I think they'll do fine against the Raiders. Ward on Adams will be a fun thing to watch. The Browns secondary, I think they have to do a much better job of holding up. The Browns are getting more pressure. Their pressure percentage is higher than it was the entire 2023 season. So the Browns are getting pressure right now at a higher clip than they did last year on average. The problem is that the secondary is not doing a good job of dissuading quarterbacks from throwing before that pressure can get home. So we're just not doing a good job of executing the game plan. Again, if we're going to focus on one part of the team that just hasn't been focused, it's the secondary. You just need better play. I think Martin Emerson desperately needs a bounce back game. He's had a rough start to the season. Greg Newsome, I think he's been fine. He's made a couple of mental errors so far. The only player I have absolutely no complaints about is Denzel Ward. He's actually just been straight up excellent every time he's been on the field. Like, it's not even an exaggeration. Right now, Denzel Ward is the best player in the defense currently, and Myles Garrett is still doing Myles Garrett things. So that is a great thing to have, but if Martin and Greg can't hold up, if you're not getting good coverage from your linebackers, you're still going to have holes created that are going to create easy passing lanes for quarterbacks to get rid of the ball quickly versus a blitz or versus heavy pressure. But that's the key to the game. One, I really this is not a joke. I hope that Jim Schwartz and Kevin Stefanski and everybody, like Mike Vrabel, everybody that's in that building preparing for this game, has a reel of the weird shit that happens when the Browns play the Raiders. I need them to understand that something weird is going to happen. I need them to be prepared for something weird that's going to happen. The Browns have the advantage when it comes to the weird factor because, look, the Browns have experienced this weirdness with this coaching staff and this set of players. They have lived through the weirdness that is the Raiders game. They should know about it. It's going to be weird. Antonio Pierce don't know nothing about this weirdness. Antonio Pierce out here just walking into a Browns-Raiders game thinking it's going to be normal. It's not. It's not going to be normal, man. Prepare for the weird. Something weird is going to happen. It cannot shake the team. But something weird is definitely going to happen. It always happens. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.